everyone, welcome, and thank you all for joining us today for the GA and new professional development track. My name is Sarah Moran, and I'm the manager of internal operations for the Cox Communications Academic Center for Student Athletes at LSU. I'll be talking to you today about all things new hire, real world stuff you should know. So in my role, I serve as the office administrator for our staff, handling everything from hiring to payroll to budget and procurement, even office copier and fax machine expert. I have been at LSU for 10 years and have facilitated almost 30 searches for our full-time professional staff in that time. It's my goal today to share with you some of what I've learned through the years that may be helpful to you in your next phase of life. So you've made it through the hardest part. You finished graduate school, you applied for the job, you got the interview, you impressed the hiring manager, and you got a job offer. So congratulations, major life changes are now potentially ahead for you. But for most of us, nothing you learned in school has prepared you for these next steps. So I hope to impart some wisdom and guidance for you today on what comes next. We'll first discuss the job offer itself and how you will navigate that process. Then we'll go over the new hire onboarding process and what that might look like. And finally, for once you are on the job, we'll review some best practices and tips on how you can be successful. We will have some time at the end for questions, and so we'll leave some time for that. So if you have any, just hold them till the end if you don't mind. And please bear in mind that all jobs and situations are different. So some of this information may not apply for you. And also, I am not a financial advisor, so make sure that you do your own due diligence to make sure that you make the best choices for your circumstances. So you've received a job offer, an official job offer. It will likely include a couple of important details. So your requested start date and a starting salary amount that's going to be that's being offered. You might be really excited. This could be your dream job, but it may be in your best interest to hold off before immediately accepting that offer. So what do I mean by that? Many times when a potential employer makes an offer, they will provide a deadline for you to respond by. So it's not expected that you decide immediately. And you absolutely should think over the offer and get back to the employer or hiring manager that has given you the offer. You may choose to politely thank them for the offer, let them know that you will consider it and get back to them within 24 hours or whatever time frame works for you. This will give you some time to consider the salary that's being offered, whether that fits with your goals and your budget. It will allow you to calculate the value of any benefits or compensation packages that they might be offering, and consider the timeline of when they want you to start work. Is it feasible for you? You may need to discuss with your family or significant other and how it could impact them. These are all considerations that should have you pause and deliberate before responding to an official acceptance. It could be helpful if you've done some research in advance, such as the average starting salary for the position in that market. Based on cost of living in certain regions, the starting salary for the same job in one state could be drastically less than in another state, but from a cost of living standpoint, actually be more comparable than it seems. Because of this, you may want to look into the cost of living in areas you're applying and interviewing, just so you have some advanced knowledge. And things like, what is the average cost in the housing and rental markets? What is the average you will pay in state and local taxes? As far as research on salaries, a good place to start is salary.com. You can find salary ranges in various markets based on position titles and job duties. And we'll look at a couple examples of that now. All right, so we are going to look at an example using the same job title, but in two different areas of the country for comparison. So this is the average salary for an academic advisor in Dallas, Texas. You can see that it can range from $38,750 on the low end and as high as $61,424 on the top of the scale, with the median being $49,032. The median is a good place to set your expectations. Now, let's say you have a few years of professional experience already under your belt. So you can input that right here. Right here. And it should update. And says you can get $484 more than the median because you have a few years of experience. So input your specific information to see how much you should expect those influencing factors to adjust the median price point that you can get. All right, so now we will look at the same job, but this time in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So by comparison, you can see the average salary for an academic advisor in Philadelphia might range from $41,781 on the low end and as high as $66,228 on the top of the scale, with the median being $52,867. So the cost of living in Philadelphia is higher than in Dallas. So that may be what could account for the variance in the average salary range. Excuse me. This is why the tool is so helpful, because you can narrow your scope of research in ways that are specific to you and your situation. Another helpful tool on this website is the cost of living calculator. Right here. So this is going to show you the cost of living index by city and state, as well as some other factors such as housing, food, transportation, energy, childcare, which are all important to factor into your budget plan. We'll look at Louisiana as an example. You can see on average, Louisiana is lower than the national average for cost of living, and it will vary based on what city you're in. So in New Orleans, you have 95%, which New Orleans is being one of the largest cities in the state. So cost of living index in New Orleans would be 95% of the national average, whereas in Shreveport, which is also a bigger city, but a little more rural, its cost of living would be 88% of the national average, so 12% lower than the average. So you could see that your cost of living would be less in Shreveport compared to New Orleans. You can also see additional relevant data such as cost of energy in the summer months, which in Louisiana can be quite high with the heat and humidity here. And there's also some frequently asked questions about how to best apply this data. So down here, you can see that. So they have this for all cities and states. So a great source of information here. So we'll come back. All right, so now that we know a little more about the salaries, cost of living, and how to find that relevant data, let's go back to our job offer. So most of the time, employers will have a certain budget for the position they're hiring you for. If you feel like the salary offer is lower than you expect or prefer, or based on your research, by all means, come back with a counter offer. They may have made the initial offer expecting that you would do just that. So they may have lowballed a little bit. Or they may have offered you the highest amount that they could, not wanting to miss out on your acceptance. So they didn't want you to get away. So they gave you their top offer right from the start. But the salary decision can be a negotiation, a two-way street. So you don't have to take what is offered, and you won't know what you can get if you don't ask for it. Once you provide a counteroffer, one of three things could possibly happen. One, they can accept your requested salary amount. Great. Two, they may counter your counter, meeting somewhere in the middle. Or three, they could decline your counter and stay firm with the originally offered amount. Maybe there's no room in the budget, and that's all they can do. From there, the decision is yours. So don't feel inclined to take an offer that will not work for your budget. If it's not a fit, then it's not meant to be, and that's okay. You don't want to have to work 2 or 3 jobs in order to afford to live, but ultimately that's for you to decide. So just personally, I never had anyone teach me about salary negotiations until I came to my job here at LSU. I was just grateful to get the job offer and took what was offered immediately. But our former executive director and my boss, many of you may know him, have known him, the late Kenneth Miles, he kind of helped me see this in a different light, and always used to say that you should let the employer decide if they can afford you. I learned so much from him, including the perspective that the job market is competitive going both ways, and the employer may be competing to hire you just as much as you're competing to get that job. So if you're an exceptional candidate, you're highly desired in the market. But salary is not the only thing that can be negotiated. So if you're being offered a position that's out of state, sometimes employers will offer you relocation funding, or a relocation incentive is what we call it. A couple of ways they may do this is they may offer to pay your expenses for a moving company that they're contracted with, or they could also offer you a cash payment to assist with your moving expenses for you to just spend as you wish, however you need. There could also be an offer to reimburse your relocation expenses. So you would pay up front and then submit receipts for reimbursement. The employer could potentially offer up to 25% of your salary for relocation expenses, but just a note, LSU's maximum is 10%. So this can vary greatly from employer to employer. And not every employer will offer this option, but if they do, it may be something you can work into your salary negotiation. So maybe they won't come up on salary, but will provide an extra $2,000 for your relocation expenses. Perhaps there was no relocation funding offered, but it's something you want to ask for. Also, make sure you understand that many times this extra money, especially if it's a cash payment, is considered taxable income. So you just need to take that into account. And you may have the option to have the taxes withheld initially from that cash payment, so it doesn't hit you later in the year. So that could be something to consider depending on what you need. Another important consideration if you're moving to a new area is understanding the housing market. So this will likely be your biggest monthly expense. So you want to make sure you've done your research on the area and know what your average monthly payments may be for rent or mortgage. This may not have occurred to you, but does it make sense for you to buy a house? Are you in an area where the homes are appreciating in value? Possibly. Most people think you must have a 20% down payment to purchase a home, and that can be quite intimidating. but there are options available for 100% financing, including VA loans if you're a military service member, veteran, or surviving spouse, rural development and rural housing, also known as USDA loans, if you buy in a designated rural area. And some states will also offer first-time homebuyer grants and programs to help cover the cost of your down payment. So this may be an option for you that you want to consider if the rental market in the area is highly competitive and prices tend to run really high for rentals. On the other hand, if the real estate in the area is depreciating in value, rental may be your best option since it involves less risk. So these are all considerations that are important for you to know in advance so you can calculate this into your budget and know where you need to be with salary in order for a job offer to make sense. Another consideration is selecting the specific location for your residence. So if you have children, do you prefer to be in a specific school zone? What about proximity to work and commute time? Make sure to consider the mode of transportation available. Do you require public transportation? If you work at a college or a university, many areas closest to campus have a high volume of students living there, so that may not be ideal for you. And it may be good to ask questions from your or of your future coworkers about the area and where in town they would suggest you look. This is something our staff does when we have new employees coming from out of state. We try to provide them with any information that can be helpful and answer questions they might have. But where you choose to live can have a major impact on your budget. So that's why doing your research and due diligence on housing options and locations is crucial. All right, so now that you have all the key information on salaries, cost of living, housing, and relocation costs, you can hopefully make the best decision for you and your family on accepting that job offer. So let's say you've accepted the offer and you're starting a new job. So usually when you start a new job, most employers will have a new employee orientation or training to introduce you to your benefits options. We will review a few of those onboarding topics today from a general perspective, including health and other insurance plans, other types of benefits, retirement plans, leave options and holidays, and employment policies and taxes. So most employers will offer health insurance plans at a minimum since it's required by federal law for employers with 50 or more employees. So the most common types of health insurance plans that are offered are going to be the HMO plans, which stands for a health maintenance organization, or a PPO plan, which stands for a preferred provider organization. The HMO plans will have a lower deductible with copays for visits and a higher monthly premium, which is just your monthly payments for that plan. And the PPO will have a higher deductible, but will cost less in your monthly premiums. A deductible is what you pay before your insurance starts to pay your medical expenses. So many times there's a split cost for the expenses once that deductible's been met. So for example, if you have an 80-20 split, that means that any out-of-pocket medical cost, the employer would cover, or the insurance company would cover at 80%, and you would be responsible for 20%. Certain services could still be covered at 100%. A lot of times your wellness or preventative services, and you may have maximum coverage for certain providers in a preferred network. So you'll just need to determine what makes sense for you and your family. Are you generally healthy, or do you see a lot of specialists? Are you seeing doctors who are in the preferred network, usually those health plans will have a database you can search for your current doctors to see if they're covered in the network. What are your out-of-pocket maximum costs if you were to have an emergency? And if you have specific questions about coverages or prescriptions or whatever may be influenced by a health insurance plan, I would encourage you to make an appointment with your employer's HR or benefits office, since they can answer a lot more questions in a one-on-one setting. Another option for insurance that may be offered are the flexible spending accounts. These accounts are funded pre-tax for a designated amount for the entire year for you to use on the approved services. So typically they have these for healthcare, and they also have them for child and dependent care. There are limits on how much you can put into these accounts. And if you don't use it within that calendar year, they will expire and you won't have them for the following year. So you don't want to put too much money in there and then, miss out on spending it. I use this account to help pay out-of-pocket costs before meeting my deductible, as well as like dental and vision services that may not be covered by my dental or vision insurance plans. For example, my vision insurance covers 6 months of contact lenses, so I use my FSA to purchase the other 6 months supply that I would need for that year. Now we will look at some other supplemental insurance plans that may be offered by your employer. So this is not an exhaustive list, but you can see we have dental insurance, vision insurance, life insurance, critical illness, the FSA accounts that I spoke about, child or dependent care, health care, accidental death and dismemberment, long-term disability, accident protection, identity protection, long-term care, and workers' compensation. So again, you will just have to decide what fits your needs and your budget. So do you have dependents who rely on your income? That may drive your decision on what you need. Is there physical risk associated with your job? Do you have a family history of illness? So many of these are optional or supplemental benefits, and the needs will vary from person to person. I do want to point out that some plans may have a wellness benefit. So for example, LSU offers a $100 payment per year on the critical illness policy if you take preventative tests or screenings. So if you show proof that you've had those screenings, they give you that $100 payment, and it covers pretty much the annual premiums on the policy. So it kind of pays for itself. And that policy covers cancer and heart attacks and strokes and major critical illnesses. So it benefits them if you're getting those wellness screenings. So you get rewarded by getting that $100 payment. That's just one example that LSU has. There may be others. So talk to your benefits office about that. The flexible spending accounts can also be a great option, but like I said, they have the use it or lose it provision where they have to be spent within that calendar year. So there's sometimes a grace period for you to submit receipts and such. So, but just be careful that you don't lose your money on that. But when it comes to insurance, you just have to do a cost benefit analysis, because insurance most of the time is a gamble. You pay for it in case you need it and hope you don't ever have to use it. And you also may consider that once you make a decision on the insurance policies that you'd like, you may not be able to make changes or add or drop policies until your employer's annual open enrollment period. So there are exceptions to this for qualifying events, which could include marriage or divorce, birth or adoption of a child. If you age out of your parents' policy at age 26, et cetera, there's other qualifications that may allow you to enroll outside of that annual enrollment period, which is usually in October, November. So employers may also have some other types of benefits or perks, or something we like to call lagniappe in Louisiana, which just means something extra. Some of these include maybe a work cell phone or a mobile device stipend for a cell phone, tuition exemption if you work at a college or university. You may get discounts at local retailers. They may offer parking if you work at a location that requires paid parking. They may cover that. Some may have a gym or health club on site, or memberships available at a discount or something of that nature. They may also have cell phone discounts just on your personal cell phone plan. A lot of employers have discounts with some of the national providers. So yeah, and there's probably plenty of others that I don't have included here. All right, so now we're going to get into retirement, talk about being an adult. So first off, 401k plan is going to be the most common. This is a workplace retirement account that allows you to contribute a portion of your pre-tax paycheck to tax deferred investment, excuse me. These contributions reduce the amount of income you would pay taxes on for that year. So for example, if you earned $50,000 salary, you contributed $5,000 to your 401k, you would only be taxed on $45,000 for that year. Your investment gains are allowed to grow tax deferred until you withdraw the money in retirement. That's when you would actually pay the taxes on those funds. If you withdraw the funds before you retire, before age 59 and a half, you could pay a 10% penalty, and then you would also have to pay the federal and state income taxes on the amount that you're withdrawing. Many times employers will match their employees' contribution to a 401k, typically up to 6%, but it can vary. And an employer match is essentially free money. So if you don't contribute up to the maximum for the employer match, you're just leaving that money on the table. So one thing to note is that there may be a vesting period or a specific amount of time that's put in place by your employer. But once you're fully vested in your plan, you now have 100% ownership of those funds in your account. Until you're vested, you would not be able to take your employer's contributions if you were to leave that job, but you would be able to take your contributions. You own those regardless. And you can transfer them to your next employer, or whatever you wanted to do with that. For example, retirement plan may be vested after 5 years of employment. So definitely something to look into and ask about. Another type of retirement account is called an IRA, or an individual retirement account. It may be a good option for you if your employer doesn't offer a retirement plan. You would not have to pay taxes annually on the investment gains, which would help your investments to grow more quickly. And then a Roth IRA is similar to an IRA, except that your contributions are made with after-tax dollars. So you've already paid taxes on those investment funds. Any earnings generated from the Roth IRA would not be taxed again. So a benefit of this plan is that you can withdraw contributions before retirement age without penalty, as long as it's been 5 years since your first contribution. A Roth 401k is a combination of the Roth IRA and a 401k plan. So this type of account can sometimes be offered through your employer. It's similar to a Roth IRA in that your contributions come after tax, and also that your contributions and earnings are never taxed again if you remain in the plan for at least 5 years. One additional feature of the Roth 401k plan is that there is no income limit like you would have with a Roth IRA. Pension plans are another really popular one, especially in public service. jobs. So a pension plan is a retirement plan that requires the employer to make contributions to a pool of funds that are set aside and invested on the employee's behalf. The earnings on the investments generate income for the worker upon your retirement. A pension plan may allow or require employees to contribute to the plan, and the employer may also match a portion of the worker's annual contributions up to a specific percentage or dollar amount. Now, there are two types of pension plans: a defined benefit and a defined contribution plan. So in the defined benefit plan, the employer basically guarantees that the employee will receive a definite amount of benefit upon retirement, regardless of the performance of the investment. And then, so the employer is liable for the pension payments to the retiree, with the amount typically determined by a formula. So they would use like typically your earnings and years of service to determine what your monthly payout is going to be for the pension. If the assets in the pension plan are not sufficient to pay the benefits, then the company, not the employee, is liable for the remainder of the payment. About 85% of public employees and roughly 15% of private employees in the US are covered by a defined benefit plan today, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So as you can see, this is mainly used for public service, public employees. Here in Louisiana, some of the pension plans offered include city and state employees, teachers, and police, fire, and emergency personnel. By comparison, in a defined contribution plan, the employer makes specific contributions on behalf of the worker, usually matching the contributions made by the employee. So remember, we talked about the employer match. So the final retirement benefit received by the employee just depends on the investment performance of their retirement plan. The employer's liability to pay a specific benefit ends as soon as they make those contributions. So in this case, you're more at the mercy of the markets where your funds are invested. A 401k would also be considered a defined contribution plan. A couple of other plans just I want to touch on really quick. A 403b plan is the equivalent of a 401k, but for employees in the public sector, such as public school teachers, and then also for employees of nonprofit or tax-exempt organizations. 457b plan is also similar to a 401k, but for employees in state and local government. So as you can see, there are many options when it comes to retirement. It can feel overwhelming, but some investment companies offer financial advisors who can assist you with your financial planning, and sometimes at no cost. For example, if your employer offers a retirement plan through Fidelity, maybe see if they have a representative who you can speak to about your investment options. All right, so leave options and holidays. So you'll want to find out what are the holidays that are provided and what leave is offered. Most employers will offer separate leave to take for sick and annual or vacation, some call it. Some may have like a floating holiday, so not on a specific day, you can kind of take it whenever. Some may have a requirement that you coordinate with your fellow coworkers to plan time off that is staggered. You know, if you work in a smaller office, sometimes that's going to be something that you'll have to coordinate. And if there are multiple options, you just have to decide what works best for you. So at LSU, we have a couple of different accrual plans. Let's say, for example, one plan would accrue 1 day of leave per month with no limit. You can accrue as much as you want. And let's say there's another plan that accrues 2 days of leave per month. So it accrues faster, but then that leave plan may have a cap. So after you get 3 weeks worth of leave, it caps and you can't earn any more than that. So what would work best for you? Do you take a lot of leave? Do you travel out of town for holidays? Do you need that accrual, or or is it going to be a waste if you accrue it quickly because you just don't ever take days off? So just something you have to decide what is best for your situation if different plans are offered. So employment policies during onboarding, sometimes you'll have to sign or acknowledge certain policies. Other times they'll just be provided for you. So some examples that I have listed here: data security, privacy and confidentiality, workplace sexual harassment, leave policies, drug or drug testing policies, a loyalty oath, intellectual property, and discipline or grievance procedures for employees. It would be good to familiarize yourself with the employee handbook and any other employee policies that are relevant to your position. So you should know what's expected of you. All right, taxes. This is something I often get questions about. And so just from a general standpoint, you can expect about 1/3 of your income to go towards taxes. How you file your W-4 is completely up to you. But if you end up overpaying what you owe for your tax liability, you will likely get a tax refund. And if you underpay your tax liability, then you will owe taxes when you go to file. So there are calculators to help you determine what you should claim and how many exemptions, if any. So linked right here is a tax calculator. It would calculate your withholding amount and any exemptions that you would want to claim. I will have this linked in the presentation under the resources at the end. All right, so now let's talk about some best practices for on the job. So dress code and office hours. So it may be a good idea. This may seem like common sense, but you just never know. It may be a good idea if it's not specifically outlined in an employee handbook or onboarding guide to ask about the expectations for dress code and office hours. So some offices may offer like a casual dress on a certain day, like a jean Friday, but just keep in mind if you have an important presentation or meeting, you may want to dress up a little more on that day. You never want to feel like the only one in the room who is underdressed, and you never want to feel the need to apologize for your attire. You know, you only get one chance to make a first impression. So pay periods. Ask in advance when you will be paid. Will it be every 2 weeks, 1st and 15th of the month, or maybe the last or the first day of the month? Knowing when you can expect your payroll to deposit to your account will assist you with planning your budget and monthly expenses. So for example, our full-time staff at LSU get paid once per month. So we have to make sure that paycheck lasts for all of our bills and expenses for the entire month until the next payday. This can be a challenge to adjust to at first, but if you plan ahead, you know what to expect, you can make it work. So professional development, a great way to grow in your career is to join local and national organizations, such as service organizations or professional organizations in your field. See if your employer might be willing to cover the costs of these membership fees as part of your professional development. You may also have an opportunity to attend conferences for continuing education and networking. Perhaps your supervisor would be willing to assist with or cover travel expenses if you agree to present at a conference or participate in a committee. You're helping to brand your organization and serving as a representative of your employer. So this is a good way to approach asking about potential opportunities. If the budget doesn't allow coverage of travel expenses, maybe seek out local or free conferences or online student support summits and other events to attend. This will show your supervisor that you're taking your professional growth seriously, even if they are not able to assist financially. Performance planning. Many workplaces will have some form of performance planning and evaluation. You want to go into your evaluation or planning session prepared with some goals in mind. It's good to have some goals for your job as well as your professional growth. You want to make sure these are measurable and realistic, but still challenging. Networking and involvement. So finding a local club or committee that you want to be involved in to expand your network um, could be a great thing. Get involved. You never know what doors could open for you. Many cities have organizations for young professionals like Rotary, Kiwanis, Boys and Girls Club, just to name a few. So seek out mentors in these organizations or through the connections that you make. Social media etiquette. So social media has become a constant part of our daily lives, but you should be aware when you're using it and the optics. So if you're posting all day on Instagram and Twitter when you're supposed to be working, how does that reflect on you? How does that reflect on your employer? So, it may be best practice to just avoid posting on social media between standard working hours. A few exceptions to that would be the use of LinkedIn, which is more of a professional networking site, or if it's part of your job that requires you to manage social media accounts for your employer, then that would obviously be an exception to that rule. Also, email etiquette. So it's good practice to include a signature on your emails. You may want to see if your employer has a template they suggest or require, and a confidentiality statement is sometimes required. Uh, Try to respond to all emails within a 24-hour window. Even if you will have to get back to them later with their requested information, at least let them know that you're working on it. Also, be aware of using copy and blind copy. If you're sending to a large group of recipients, you may want to use blind copy. And then only use reply all if the information you're providing in your response needs to be shared with everyone on the email. Otherwise, you'll contribute to cluttering your coworkers' inboxes, and we all get way too many emails as it is. So I am so glad you were able to join me today, and I hope you learned a little bit about the world of new hire. And I would love to open it up for any questions that y'all may have. And y'all, you can either raise your hand or throw them in the chat. And I will let Alicia go ahead and share the QR code when she's ready.
Just make sure to fill this out and then fill it out for any other ones that you have been to if you haven't already.
Don't know what I've done to my Zoom. I can't find the chat. Okay, there we go. All right, so if nobody has any questions, I just want to thank y'all for coming today. And please do the session evaluation. I would appreciate your feedback. It's my first time presenting, so I would really love to get some input and feedback on how I did. So thanks again. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of the day, the rest of the summit. And see y'all later. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Great job, Sarah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, you can stop recording now.